33-year-old Susan Kay and her 37-year-old friend Joanne Tetron were found beaten to death in this Newcastle house last Wednesday. The team of 10 police investigating the murders is now entering every shred of information into a special database, capable of comparing the Carrington murders with other major crimes.
We can cross-reference all those items, and so we're not just thinking we're looking at the one piece, we may be looking at 10 separate bits of information that all relate, and the system can basically put all those together and link it for us.
Police believe the women were bashed to death sometime on Sunday the 14th, 3 days before their bodies were discovered. Detectives are desperate for help and keen to hear from anyone who may have sighted either of the victims' cars in the hours or days before their deaths.
I think this is going to be, unfortunately, a lengthy investigation. We're still asking members of the public if they have any sightings of the women involved, their vehicles, or any information to assist, could they please come forward.
In the meantime, it's hoped some serious computer clue crunching will pay off.
Just the smallest piece of information from individual pieces of the public it all sort of joins together, and it may ultimately become one big piece which may or may not solve it in the long run.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Stalled wage negotiations are at the centre of the controversy. Hundreds of workers from both the Howick and Mount Thorley mines are on strike for 5 and 7 days respectively. Howick workers met this morning, calling on a mediator to help negotiations with the mine's managers, Coal and Allied.
During that agreed time frame, we believe there should be no forced retrenchments to allow a proper playing field to reach a meaningful outcome in negotiations.
In return, they'll lift all bans and limitations. But if the olive branches refuse, the union says workers will again stop work for another 4 days. Coal and Allied says it's willing to negotiate as soon as the union is, but claims the strike is a stunt in the lead up to Wednesday's Rio Tinto AGM in Brisbane.
What we're trying to do is reach a collective agreement with them, which ultimately will see them paid more than the award. But this strike is all about a political stunt.
Production is at about 60% at both mines, with all orders being met. The union will meet with Mount Thorley workers on Friday and then the company on Wednesday. Brooke Webster, NBN News. The Good combines Indigenous culture with old-fashioned rock and roll. And they're taking the pub scene by storm. But it's early days for the band, which started playing together only a year ago. They're challenging lyrics of one the good enough support to kickstart a career.
It could be, in fact, the beds are burning of the 21st century. I think it's that good, but I just suggested to them, why not? Go for it.
But it seems one of the keys to success so far is having a didgeridoo player up front.
It's a cultural instrument, and I think it just draws people in. They love it.
He's hoping other youth will follow his lead and take on music and culture. The CD launches this Saturday night at the Town Hall Hotel at Waratah. Brooke Webster, NBN News.
Michael McDonald's family has twice had to come to terms with murder. His grandmother was stabbed to death 8 years before he was born. Last week, he had to listen to how his mother was killed.
Somebody has stolen my mother's life and taken my mum away from me, who I loved very much. She was also my best friend, and I'm going to miss her. So please, if you have any information on what happened, please help us.
The 13-year-old lives in North Queensland with his father. Tom McDonald says Joanne Tetron and her son Michael kept in touch by phone every weekend.
I spoke to her a couple of weeks ago on the phone, just concerning the young fella and how he was going, and how happy we were with his schooling and that sort of stuff. She was always interested in that.
Strike Force Rappo is in charge of finding the person or people who murdered Michael's mother and her 33-year-old friend Susan Kay in Carrington. They won't comment on who has been interviewed or whether the man released from prison in 1996 after serving 16 years for murdering Joanne Tetron's mother is a suspect.
Police investigating the deaths are still trying to establish a motive. We're seeking the assistance of any person who had dealings with the victims over the past few years to contact the Strike Force.
The bodies were found a week ago on the 17th of May. Police originally believed the women were murdered in the 3 days leading up to the gruesome discovery. Detectives now think they could have been killed any time from the 11th.
The lives of the women in the days leading up to the discovery of their bodies remain a mystery. Okay, that's why we are appealing for public assistance. Any person that could assist.
Where else would you find a couple of Queenslanders but on the veranda talking about Origin? It's a big game, but Robbie O'Davis is more worried about his season's prospects.
It's a bit crooked, the old foot. It hasn't really stood up to much treatment in the last 5-6 weeks. So from doctor's orders, they do want to operate it.
A bone graft is a simple operation that will fix his foot, but it will stop Robbie O playing again this year. He says he feels right within himself. The only problem is that if he bends the pin holding his foot together, then it's a major operation to fix it, and he's got to get the doctor's permission to play.
Really proved to myself that I'm no good to play. With the doctors putting me out and I'm running around 100%, I tend to feel I might be sitting back just thinking, could I and couldn't I have not played?
Meanwhile, Knights coach Warren Ryan believes the Blues could have benefited from having David Fairley running into the fray tonight.
I just don't know what forwards have outplayed him when we've met them, and his performances have just been outstanding from the very first game, and yet there's hardly been a mention made of him as a representative candidate.
Cool Renegade has carried Heath Ryan and his hopes for Olympic selection for the last 5 years. But even before his turn in the Lochinvar 3-day event came around, there was a setback.
Until 3:30 this morning, the horse was very sick, but he turned a corner and he's recovering like a real athlete in top condition. So it's just fingers crossed.
And the timing couldn't have been worse, with the win at this level of competition an almost sure ticket to a place in the Sydney 2000 team.
And this is really important. This is probably the most important trial in Australia with Sydney 2000 in mind.
But today's two-star dressage event showed what the future of the sport is likely to look like.
These guys are on the way up. Some of the riders are top quality riders, but the horses are on the ladder.
There's more competition in the arena tomorrow and Saturday. The cross-country also starts on Saturday, with the competition concluding on Sunday. Brooke Webster, NBN News.
It's been a public relations disaster, and fans were demanding to know why Matthew Johns wasn't offered a contract when the man himself spoke. Johns said he'd agonised but had made his final decision. The Knights blame the salary cap for not being able to offer Matthew his market worth and fought to have rules changed to have long-serving players made exempt. But the NRL didn't back such a move yesterday. But it wouldn't have mattered anyway. As Matthew left, fans stood and cheered. Then, furious Johns had been forced out of Newcastle, jeered club management. But face them they did, Chairman Michael Hill arriving from the NRL board meeting to join a general manager and board under fire. For hours they answered questions, but facts remain. The club must cut $1.2 million in player payments in 12 months to make the cap, and Matthew will just be the first to go. Jim Callanan, NBN News. With pride and Australian spots on the line, Australia B had plenty to play for and took an early lead. Defence was as good as attack, and with hometown girl Reagan Jackson leading the way, the B team looked good and took the lead 16-14 at the first quarter. With world champion hero Sherelle McMahon finding range, the number one team began living up to reputation. But the B side had some willing to carve out a name for themselves as well. It didn't stop Australia going to the break 29-27 leaders. But the Bees bounced back again in the third term to take the lead once more. And again, Australia came back. Louise Southby and Catherine Cox shooting down the Bees' lead. In the end, though, it was great defence by captain Liz Ellis that turned the match for good. An interception leading to a goal and 2-point lead, Australia winning 59-57. With Lenny Beckett at the final training session today, it confirmed the news Darren Albert wasn't set to play. Specialists advised against the winger playing tomorrow, but he expects to be right for the following match. While the ever-reliable Beckett gets another start, 19-year-old forward Josh Perry gets his first taste of the top grade.
Pretty nervous, obviously, but the boys have been helping me out. It's been good. Yeah.
Named ahead of players like Paul Rahihi and Jason Timu, the teenager steps up for Glenn Grief and will have a tough first-up assignment against a big Warriors pack.
Yeah, we had a big training session on Tuesday afternoon and that really helped me out. I was a bit nervous before that, but after the boys had a chat to me, I was pretty confident.
Meanwhile, enthusiasm should make up for any soreness from Wednesday's State of Origin win for Newcastle's 3 Blues stars.
Yeah, you just got that much adrenaline going through you, you can sort of carry it over for a couple of days, so hopefully I can, keep it going for another day or so.
After a bruising first-round encounter at Ericsson Stadium in their minds, Newcastle have planned a reception of sorts for the Warriors.
We talked about slowing their big boys down, and if they get their roll on, they're really hard to stop blokes like Stacey around the ruck. So the forwards have sort of really talked about getting up in their face and trying to slow them down.
Auckland arrived this afternoon without coach Mark Graham, who was with family in Sydney after the death of his son. Officials couldn't say if he'll make it to Newcastle for the game tomorrow.
The South Sydney Rabbitohs were one of the best-known teams in rugby league, and there was widespread dismay when they were dropped from the NRL competition. But today showed they still have plenty of supporters.
It's all about getting the red and green back in the paddock, back in a 2001 competition next year.
The Rabbitohs Roadshow has been travelling the state since March, raising funds to support the old club. Its court case begins in July.
It's more than a game. It's more than rugby league. It's about the passion to wearing the red and green. It's about a team. It's about following. It doesn't matter whether the team wins or loses. To me, it's red and green forever.
And there's a huge and high-profile support network.
Mike Whitney, Ray Martin, George Piggins is there, the man. We've also got who's that? Alan Jones and Andrew Denton.
Adam Harper, NBN News. Mark Bajiro in the multicoloured trunks feels most comfortable fighting as a middleweight, but after last night he should have more confidence in higher divisions. Bajiro faced off against a younger and heavier opponent, but in 12 rounds he proved that super middleweight class wasn't beyond his ability, winning the national title on points.
Your winner and new Australian super middleweight champion.
In the other title fight, Sydney's Ian McLeod in the yellow trunks beat Brandon Wood to the middleweight crown. The Jeff Fennick protege has also fought Bajiro before, with the match ending in a controversial draw. Now Bajiro has expressed interest in returning to middleweight division for a rematch. Adam Harper, NBN News.
If you questioned what would drive these riders out on a day like today, the answer was blowing in the wind. Australia's huge depth in eventing is highlighted with Olympic golds at the last Olympics, and competition to make Sydney 2000 is tougher than ever. Nikki Bishop wrote, "Wishful thinking at Atlanta. Today's event, possibly the last time that champion steed is ridden at the State Equestrian Centre." Homegrown star Sammy McLeod entered 2 horses and in a great effort finished 5th and 6th after the final show jumping phase of the 3-day event today. Stu Tinney, a past winner of the Lochinvar event, had been impressive all weekend and also had 2 horses entered, but just 1 penalty today cost him his 2nd win. That went to Amanda Ross on Otto Schumacher, while Branxton's Prue Barrett was 3rd. Around 130 cyclists are a little saddle sore tonight as well after the Mid-Mai Classic road race. Sydney's Steve Williams got the money in the A-grade event, while Cardiff's Margaret Hemsley was the first woman home. It wasn't just scores blowing out as icy winds swept across Waratah Golf Club. Ewan Porter losing his hat and a chance at the title with a 5-over par 76. Justin Roach had bigger problems, the wind blowing this putt well off the target and his score. Newcastle's Mark Gilson had an eye-catching round, firing one of the best rounds of the day, a 74, to get him within 1 of the leader. But carrying the pressure of leader over the final 2 rounds didn't affect Aaron Price. The Sydney sider kept his nose in front to finish 6 over the card, enough to get him the W.E. Alexander title by a shot.
Every year our coastal waters become a transit zone for thousands of humpback and southern right whales escaping the Arctic winter chill in favour of warmer climes amongst Queensland's Whitsundays. And with the whales comes the winter whale watching season that was officially opened at Port Stephens today. With bitterly cold winds and rough seas, only the keenest mammal lovers ventured to sea, out between the towering Yakabar and Tomaree headlands and past the Fingal Head Light, hoping for a glimpse. The port's fleet of 4 whale watch vessels is tackling the ocean 7 days a week, guided to the whales by a GPS-equipped spotter plane. The key to spotting a whale is when it breaks the surface of the ocean. But with so many whitecaps on today's rough sea, it made spotting the giant mammals impossible. But the experts say there's still plenty to see in the right conditions.
20 years ago we thought that the population was as low as 1,000 to 1,500 individuals for the southern right whale, and we seem to think they're up around the 3,500 mark now.
Don't expect to see them all the time. You don't expect to see whales all the time, and it was still just nice to be out on the water.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Reconciliation is the word on everyone's lips at the moment, and the University of Newcastle is no different. Proving actions speak louder than words, the university announced it will write its own Charter of Reconciliation, as well as buy a major Aboriginal artwork.
We want to purchase a very substantial piece of Aboriginal artwork, which I think gives a symbol of our commitment to reconciliation, to have that prominently displayed here in the Great Hall.
It was also an opportunity for researcher John Maynard to release his study on the Aboriginal history on the university site, which was home to the Pambalung people.
Their area stretched from Newcastle west along the southern bank of the Hunter River to Batai, out to Kiba Kiba, which is Mount Sugarloaf, then across to the northern tip of Lake Macquarie, back into town.
His report recommends the university further increase its recognition of its Aboriginal heritage.
Significant signposting is erected on the university to highlight Pambalung relationship with this land. At the university there's a new building, the new building for Aboriginal Studies is being erected next year, and that maybe a walking trail could be put in place through the university leading from that building.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News. The
proposal includes use of a 90-hectare section of the old mine for a lined landfill site. It's estimated that up to 600,000 tonnes of waste a year will be disposed of in a section of the void, including non-hazardous, inert, solid and industrial waste. The site was chosen because of its isolation, being surrounded by only mines and power stations.
In terms of impact, there really is very little impact on the community in the local area.
And the company behind the proposal is confident the current environmental impact statement will put any community fears to rest. The site will accept waste from Sydney, other regional centres and from the Singleton Shire.
Council's site at Gresford Road has about 2 years capacity, we understand. And in the event that this thing proceeds, then Council will bring its waste to this site.
There are also plans for a rail unloader and additional infrastructure on the site.
It'll have a railway bridge which comes across the highway and direct into the site here behind you. There'll be site facilities, workshops, sheds, all that sort of thing.
The EIS is on display at various locations in the Shire, with another public meeting also scheduled. Brooke Webster, NBN News. Delegates are looking for the light at the end of the tunnel for small towns in regional New South Wales. They're pulling information on practical ways to develop economies and create employment.
There's an opportunity to gain an insight into what other communities are doing, let them know what you're doing within your own community and share ideas, share concepts.
The forum includes town coordinators from across the Hunter and Central Coast. And Muswellbrook is not only the host town, but also an example of the success of development programs.
Here in Muswellbrook there's been improvements to the main street and a lot of work on developing industries. The area has experienced a lot of industry restructuring and we found it important to help to guide them to look at new opportunities that they can take advantage on.
Each program has a starting point, and identifying key areas with potential is the first step towards revitalisation.
In many cases it may be business development, it may be tourism, it may be environmental factors, it may include streetscape and beautification, it may be the attraction of new opportunities.
The conference continues tomorrow. Brooke Webster, NBN News.
Tomorrow will be payday for 70 workers who found themselves without a job when the Scone Meatworks went into receivership in January. The receivers then paid out $470,000. Today it was the federal government's turn. It contributed another $205,000, an average of $3,000 per person, and 60% of the $1.16 million total owed. The government says that figure would have been 80% if the Carr government had chipped in.
I challenged the Labor Party, Kim Beazley, and the local federal Labor members to stand up and support the Commonwealth in helping these workers.
I voted Labor all my life and I won't be voting for them again. As simple as that.
It's up to now for the Carr government to come forward and put their hand in their pocket and put their money on the table for us.
Some workers feel they've been shortchanged. There's no sign of a retraining package, which was offered to sack staff from National Textiles recently. The Minister says he'll continue to pressure the state government into contributing to the scheme. Alongside him will be the Meatworkers Union, which is demanding 100 cents in the dollar.
We will certainly be pursuing the state government, but the federal government, their portion today is only the first contribution. We want the rest.
Catherine Turner, NBN News.
word abracadabra echoed through Life Without Barriers today, with the centre's disabled clients getting a sneak preview of the World Festival of Magic, which will be staged at the Civic Theatre in October.
It's a world-renowned illusionist who's coming over from America. He does a series of 46 performances on the east coast of Australia. We're just fortunate enough in Newcastle to have 2 of these performances.
One of the performers set to blow the crowds away is 10-year-old Joel Howlett.
I saw a magician and then I thought that's what I want to be, so I got a magic trick and then went up to the mall and started busking.
Joel was one of 2,000 children from around the world to win a trip to Disney World in the US.
It was a Millennium Dreamers competition. I had to write a letter of what I do in the community, and then I sent it to Disney World, and then I got a phone call and they said, "You've won the trip to Disney World."
Most of the proceeds from the Rotary-sponsored show will go to Life Without Barriers. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
They're very fortunate that the fires occurred during the day and they've been awake because they have had very little time to get out of the premises.
It certainly helps the medicine that's in there to work. It takes away the fear and the stress of being in the hospital so that they can actually relax for a minute, and then whatever it is they've been taking can actually start to do some good.